Hello, I'm host Eric. It's Talking Fast People, and this episode is a general analysis of the entity phenomenon known as Taylor. You can see him there in the bottom right hand corner. He's got the gray hat on, and he is resting in a comfortable looking fashion. Um, Taylor's somebody I met, I don't know exactly how long ago, but it was some time ago. I was September or something, or
A year.
it's been a year.
It's
Oh,
been about a year.
okay. So the first time he
I
joined
mean,
one of the GoToMeetings rooms was when I would launch an announcement saying I'm going to have a GoToMeeting session. We're going to chat. If you'd like to come join, please join. He joined one of them, and I typed him, and he presented information that was not. He presented true answers to the questions designed to mislead me into thinking he was an ESTP, and he successfully did get me to think he was an ESTP. And then he said, "Aha!" So, and I didn't think a whole lot about it at the time, except I just sort of was like, like I didn't quite understand what I was. It was an individual I had not encountered, I guess, before that. I didn't. He didn't fit into my boxes, right? Like anybody else, I have a lot of boxes I put people into. People who don't fit in any boxes are obviously take a longer time to process cognitively. And things that take a long time to process cognitively, they're going to take a long time to process cognitively is because significance isn't processed easily. Like, I still don't get Susanna at all. I'm still working on it. She's one of those kind of INTPs. She reminds me of Kimball a lot. I still don't get Kimball, and I haven't. I mean, Kimball and I have had our full arc of interaction because that's one thing I don't get is the way that INTPs just go, okay, I'm done with you, and then that's it. you know, I don't get that because I don't sever connections with people. Not that she's severed them; she'll respond to my texts and stuff, but she's always just got something else going on. She's busy and she's and so I don't understand
What
that.
does that have to do with me?
Well, what has to do with you is the fact that I don't get you may have something to do with the fact that you're an INTP, not just the fact that you're Susanna. But for somebody like Taylor, who's an ENTP, I encounter a lot of ENTPs are who I feel as though I understand where they are. I feel I identify with them in varying degrees. Like Kato is not Kato's. I think someone of the variety of Taylor, and I think it's fair to say that unavoidably it's so. Although it might be gauche to discuss that there's a certain deference that ENTPs will afford one another according to an unspoken and yet and merit based hierarchy, which is always subject to the higher person being checked by his own wrongness. The hierarchy is determined, in fact, by frequency of wrongness, more or less, or at least frequency of frequency of incurring the consequences of wrongness, which is slightly different. And
totally different.
well played. Is that what you said?
It's totally different.
Okay, so the point is that because of that, necessarily, Taylor is going to be a bit of a, to the extent that there's somebody who's going to be looked to for example or answers in some regard, it's more likely to be for somebody like Kato is more likely to find answers from Taylor. Somebody like Trenton is more likely to find answers from me because we're different subtypes of the personality. So there's Taylor's subtype is the rarest, I think, of the ENTP subtypes because you don't usually get that much SE, I think, in ENTPs. I think he has it a little bit backwards and thinks that I'm unusually bad at SE. I think most ENTPs are probably more like me, and he's actually the outlier in that regard because, um, well, I don't know.
Why? Yeah, why?
I guess because most of the ENTPs I've encountered have been more likely to be harmed by their metaphysical creativity you seem to be immune to the harms of your own metaphysical creativity because it's so TI based.
Well, I TI'd through it, young.
So everybody's so TI based, right? It's like you TI'd through it because it means you were able to prioritize the conclusiveness of TI over the open-endedness of NE when it came to things that had practical application to opening more NE doors in other areas. So you couldn't really exploit your NE without first suppressing it by TI so that you could set up shit so that you could let out NE again. I think that's a fair way to say that you mastered a trick that would be very useful for most ENTPs to master. I think it requires you, however, in order to have that trick, probably to be 8 first in the tri-type. Because the difference between 8 first in the tri-type and 7 first in the tri-type is a awareness of the moment, and that ties in with the SE. So if you're 8, like I've described Taylor before as mentally shadowboxing all the time, keeping track metaphysically of who's metaphysically practicing jabs where, who's metaphysically actually sort of throwing a little kick at him, though very hidden, who's whatever. He's aware of that shit and looking to check those who would look to check him. I, on the other hand, am assuming no one's trying to check me. I'm assuming what I get to do is fun, and it's fine. Everyone wants to play too. And then, I mean, basically, what I've done is I've relied on my ability to yell at people to make sure that if they don't think it's fun, then they're the ones who are paying, not me. You know, it's not, the problem isn't that I'm having fun here. The problem is that you interrupted my fucking fun with your wrongness. So, but see, it's it means I'm not aware in the moment. I'm not looking out for all comers. I'm not checking out for angles and stuff. I'm focusing on what I'm focusing on is fun. That's a big difference from Taylor, who's focusing on what he's focusing on is fun, while concurrently, you'll notice he paces around a lot more than me. Not at the moment, but he goes from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. He multitasks more. It means that he's half in the present space in the moment and half metaphysically up here. And that is probably as distant from reality as he ever gets, is when he's in here, so that his eyes are, his ears are at least focused on this if he's paying attention. Like, the topics like this is probably as far removed from reality as the physical world of reality as Taylor gets, because his full attention is listening to these very interesting words in which I'm describing him and why and how he is the way he is. Which, of course, for any ENTP is the ideal subject for any feature-length film or multi-book series or one-man play. Any number of those things would be fine. Host Eric, the mini-series would be great. You know.
I think that
go ahead, Taylor. Sorry.
I think we should do that. We should have a series of self-indulgent, starting now.
Right. Well, yeah, and this is a good example of one, and it's a good example of how self-indulgent though it may be, it's actually extremely interesting to me anyway. I would not be surprised if other people find it interesting as well, because, well, Taylor's pretty fucking interesting, right? I mean, here he is. He's this guy who works at a bank and who fucking, it just is like, you know, he's big pimping 24/7. There's no other way to put it. And that's a display thing. Like ENTPs, we like to display our pimping nature. We don't think it's of any value if it's hidden. We're like the girl with the big boobs that kind of puts them out on display. Taylor, you carry guns around on camera all the time.
Well, there's no point in not anymore. It's almost encouraged at this point.
I think it should be encouraged. Just like I think putting your big boobs on display should be encouraged too.
It should be encouraged.
Right.
Why would we encourage such wonderful things?
And that's why I wear this hat.
And that's why I have this knife.
Mm-hmm.
To compensate for lack of boobs.
Yes.
No, these are my boobs. These are my metaphysical boobs right here.
Katie.
Susanna, do you have metaphysical boobs or only real boobs?
Yeah.
Would not know.
Okay. Anyway, Susanna is not wanting to talk about her metaphysical boobs, so we won't talk about them. What we will talk about instead is Taylor's metaphysical boobs. So every person has their own metaphysical boobs. Taylor's are his green shoes, I think. They're the adornment to his feet.
We're doing a live stream about me.
No, we're doing a recorded video. I gotta upload it after I'm done with this.
Oh, it's a recorded video. It's not a live stream, but it's about me.
It is about you. And it's going to be about over in about 5 minutes because I got to go back to work because I got to cover policy because I don't have anybody else to cover it. So, the next thing I want to say about Taylor, I guess to relate it back to the sort of linear narrative, after I met him about a year ago the first time, he's the only person about who's ever come on here that I've ever made a video after the fact saying, I wish I could talk to that person again. And it took me a while to come up with that, to make that video. And when I made it, it was because there was a time last year, I don't know, a year and a month, less than a year ago or whatever, when I was thinking, I want there to be some older ENTP that I can talk to. And the only person that came to mind that seemed to be like, I thought, well, he came to mind even though he's not older than me. It was Taylor, and he had a kid. I thought he had a housekeeper. I didn't know Katie was his woman. I just thought he lived in Texas and had a housekeeper who was shy about getting on camera. Huh?
It was kind of a gray area thing.
So anyway, that's what I thought. And yet I made a video saying I wish that guy would come back because I made a video about basically most of it was about me wanting to find somebody who had some answers.
I don't think I could find that.
I don't know. I don't even know if I could find it. It would be a hard find. But anyway, and then eventually you came back. And I think I was like, oh, hey, it's you. It's that guy. I don't remember what your name was.
That's exactly what she was like.
And then after that, he started hanging around more and more. And I realized, I think we had like we had a testing period of figuring out where we could argue about shit. And we just found that we couldn't really argue about shit because what Taylor understands as an instinct is, I'm not sure if he wouldn't use like debate terms to explain why it is this way, but he gets why a certain line of argumentation will be a dead end well before we start walking down it, which is what I do as well. So it's like we go, well, could we argue about, and before we even finish the sentence, we both have figured out that that's not a viable argument. That's not a viable position for me to hold. So I'll be like, no, I kick that. I'm not going to argue that position. I'm not going to be able to sustain it against argumentation.
It was really hard for us to find something to argue about.
Right. We really couldn't. And we really never did, actually.
I mean, there's that one where we forced the water. You were demonstrating water.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Yeah.
It was closer the other night when we were arguing about definition of a crime. Because you thought you saw a possible route.
I won that.
No, you didn't. You failed to distinguish between crime and accident. You lost.
No, because I used the definition. You used Eric's perfect world definition. That is not the best way,
Taylor.
To
the best way to adjudicate is for you to answer the question: distinguish between a crime and an accident, without accounting for what I just said about. All that other stuff. I don't want to fight the fight again. You didn't address that. You got stumped by it. We at the end, you were like,
This is the first time you've asked that.
No, I asked it that night. You got stumped by it, and you didn't. But that's where it stopped. That's why I won it.
What was the question?
Distinguish between an accident and a crime. Then
is it illegal?
Okay, but so for example, if I intentionally vandalize a car, it's illegal. If I'm walking, not paying attention to my baseball bat, and accidentally I'm turning around to make a joke, and I break the window, it's an accident. Now, in the first instance, I am both civilly and criminally liable. In the second instance, I'm only civilly liable.
Right.
So
because it's a lesser crime. It's not. If you had done the same accident while you're driving the car and you run over a person, it's manslaughter. That's both types. Because,
then Taylor, but you've made the distinction though, then, right? There's a difference, and what is the difference? Based on
the difference between those two is intent. Intent only matters If in trivial crimes, in the lesser crimes,
No, it's
they're
not true.
crimes.
It depends a lot on the specific crime because it depends on the point is that there's a distinction between that which is intended and intentional and that which is not. So the definition you were relying on allowed in for non-intentional, non-crimes to be included in that definition of crime. I said, therefore, that definition is inadequate. You never responded to that point.
Use the baseball bat as an example. You did not.
What did that example purport to answer?
That because it was an activity that was not illegal. You were dividing more between victimless crimes and victimful crimes.
No, I was saying you don't like my definition of crime, which is to say it's a rights violation. But if you want to argue against my definition of crime being a rights violation, you can't win by simply appealing to the authority of another book's definition. You have to win by showing why that definition is actually preferable or how it impacts the impacts of the other things being discussed.
Because language is a tool. Language is a tool, and we need to assume that some things, when we're discussing topics, some things are not debatable. Now, crime is typically understood to mean that. So, is it a better definition of the word? Probably not. Is it the best application of it? Absolutely.
Okay, but let me say what we're doing right here. You said this is my definition of crime, and Eric, this is your definition of crime, and you're saying here's why you should prefer my definition of crime. The reason is because there are two different flows going on here. There's my positions and there's your positions. There's my responses and there's your responses. So in this instance, you're saying here's my definition. I'm saying, well, here's my definition. And you're saying we should prefer my definition because why? The only actual warrant there is because it's from a dictionary.
So the default is my definition because that's society's default definition. That's a language's default definition. If you want to change the definition to a better definition,
but I answered that by pointing out it's not society's definition because it allows in things that are clearly not crimes by consensus definition. Accidents are not crimes. That definition allowed those in, so we should not prefer that definition.
That didn't define it. That didn't define it. All that did was put stratas on it. There's different circles of hell. There's different tiers of crimes. There's different tiers of how much you should be at fault for something.
You don't have any arguments except prefer your definition. So you need to at least win that argument, and you haven't won it yet because you haven't answered my point about it.
You're saying that they can't. That because some lesser crimes are not, you're not held criminally responsible due to a lack of intent. That means that intent is the core part of the crime, and it's not.
No, I'm saying that means we should not prefer your definition.
I didn't say for what
for crime. Okay, since your definition of crime includes shit that's not crimes, we shouldn't prefer your definition.
Reinventing the language. If we were reinventing the language. But
no, Taylor, no. Listen, you're not. You need to be objective about this because listen to what I'm saying. We agree that the point in dispute here is whether or not a rights violation ought to be used as the defining characteristic of a crime. Okay. Yeah. No, this is the point we're disputing here. Now let me move layers. Okay. Now the next layer is you're saying we shouldn't use your definition of crime, Eric. We should use this other definition instead because your definition of crime is not actually society's definition. And therefore, we should prefer this one. And the reason it's society's definition is because it's from a dictionary. Except my point is it's not for the argument of whose definition to prefer. The answer is even if it is society's definition, because it's in the dictionary. It's not society's definition in practice because this definition would allow in things that are obviously not crimes, and so it's not a very good definition on that grounds. Now, if we're asking which definition ought we prefer for the purpose of the argument of the thing we're going to argue, that's a different matter. Then which definition would we prefer for the purpose of choosing a definition to adjudicate the arguments that follow? It's a framework versus contention level thing.
Okay, so your definition is better than society's definition. However, the original argument came about because you just assumed that you could change the definition of that word.
I already established it's not society's definition. That was my warrant, is that it allows in shit that society agrees is not a crime.
No, society is a crime because the law can uphold punishment for it. It's not.
But don't keep switching from framework to contention level. on the framework argumentation level, you cannot justify the preference of your definition on the grounds that it's better in any way, shape, or form unless you can show that it's better.
Shut the fuck up and let me explain this. This phone is the definition as a concept by itself. We both agree that we like yours better. Your phone is better. This is a great phone. It's better. We should change all phones to this phone. That's done. This phone is what we were using. Is the form? It's the word in action.
That phone is what you're calling society's bathtub.
No, this form is the conversation we were having in which you said crime. You used it as a word in another thought process, in another chain of thought.
I know, you were right about that.
Well, then I'm fucking right, and you're fucking right about...
No. I tell you what you're definitely wrong about. You were wrong about having won that because you didn't answer any of these points.
What?
You didn't win the definition, therefore you don't win the argument.
I wasn't arguing that we both think this is the best phone. I was never arguing that. I was saying that it's retarded to assume that you could just swap this phone in over here.
And I explained to you that from a discursive critique perspective, it's preferable because it's the only way to actually affect discursive change in people.
Drive out here to Kansas again so that you can fall on this.
That's a sure sign you lost.
I actually didn't even hear the last say it again. I didn't hear it. I didn't lose.
I said I already explained that we need to position the thing as though it were the thing rather than try to advocate for making it the thing. Yeah. It's a better way of discursive. It's a better discursive critique of the existing status quo and better way to affect meaningful change in people's thinking.
Okay, so you're saying the best way to improve the definition